Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's to get our heads around the huge expansion of the BRICS bloc. We've got a stack of source materials here, and we're going to give you the shortcut.
And it's necessary work because the scale is just staggering.
It really is.
With the new members, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Indonesia, the UAE joining the original 5, this is now a 10-member coalition.
And what a coalition. I mean, we are talking about 48% of the entire global population.
Almost half the world.
And a collective GDP of over $30 trillion. It's rapidly closing in on the G7's $46 trillion.
So the big question we have to tackle in this deep dive is, is this a unified force ready to overturn the U.S.-led order?
Or is it something else? A collection of countries with, frankly, wildly different goals.
Exactly. And our sources use this great academic phrase for it, institutional balancing.
Right. How should we translate that for everyone listening? Is it just a polite way of saying they're pushing back?
It's more nuanced than that. They aren't trying to tear the whole system down. Not yet, anyway. Institutional balancing means they're building their own parallel structures. Things like the New Development Bank, the CRA.
So they're creating alternatives within the system.
Yes, to reduce their exposure to Western-dominated frameworks. It's about systemic rebalancing, not, immediate confrontation.
But the papers point out a huge paradox here. They all talk about sovereignty, but what that word means in Moscow seems totally different from what it means in Cairo or Brasilia.
That is the core tension. The unity is rhetorical, but the ambition is intensely national, and you see that most clearly when you get to technology.
Artificial intelligence.
The critical battleground. But before we get there, we have to tackle the biggest headline grabber.
De-dollarization. Is the dollar's dominance really about to end?
Well, the narrative is incredibly powerful. You hear the rhetoric all the time.
But the facts on the ground, what do they say? What about that big summit in Rio de Janeiro in July 2025?
Our sources were really clear on this. In the final 126-point declaration from that summit, there was zero mention of de-dollarization.
Zero.
And even more importantly, absolutely no mention of a common currency.
So all the big talk just vanished when it came time to sign the paper.
It did. The language they used about trading in local currencies was, let's say, intentionally vague and very modest.
So why the hesitation? Especially from the big players.
You have to look at their own self-interest. Even Russia, which is usually the most vocal, Putin himself publicly walked back the common currency idea in late 2024. He explicitly said they are not seeking to abandon the dollar.
He said it's too early to talk about, which sounds like a very pragmatic move if you don't want to provoke the U.S.
It's entirely pragmatic. And then you have China, the bloc's biggest economy.
And they're actively against it.
Actively. Beijing's goal is the slow, steady internationalization of their own currency, the renminbi.
But they need to maintain control.
Absolutely. A fully convertible BRICS currency would threaten their capital controls. And that's a non-starter for them.
So individual caution trumps collective action. The stability of the dollar, for now, is more valuable than the political statement.
And that caution is driven by, well, fear. The newer members like India and South Africa are terrified of U.S. retaliation.
Like tariffs.
Exactly. The South African financial sector warned about punitive immediate measures. So the takeaway is pretty clear. The consensus is broken. It's every nation for itself.
Okay, so if sovereignty isn't about creating a new currency, it has to be about the future. It has to be about technology.
Right, which brings us to artificial intelligence.
Our sources lay out these 4 key ways to compare their strategies: computational infrastructure, data, workforce, and R&D.
And when you look across those 4 areas, the bloc immediately splits into 2 very different camps.
The global leaders, and then everyone else, the adopters.
Precisely. You have China and Russia on one side. They are chasing what they call comprehensive technological sovereignty.
Which means
massive state-funded investment across the entire AI pipeline, from designing chips to writing algorithms. For them, it's about global leadership.
And China explicitly links this to national defense, right? Dual-use tech.
Yes. And then you have the other 8 members. Their strategies are much more modest.
They're not trying to invent the next big thing.
No, they're focused on adopting existing AI to fix real-world problems, in healthcare, education, security.
The geopolitical goals must be totally different then.
Completely. China and Russia want global dominance. Iran wants to be a regional power, top 10 in AI by 2033, and they root their strategy in Islamic values.
And Brazil.
Brazil's strategy just mentions seeking a relevant position in forums. There's no clear ambition for leadership at all.
Let's drill down into that first axis, the one that's hardest to see. Computational infrastructure.
The machines that do the thinking.
Exactly. And our sources say any infrastructure you build today will be obsolete in 5 years. This is a brutal race.
It is. And the leaders, China and Russia, are obsessed with domestic hardware production. They want to cut their dependence on foreign suppliers like TSMC.
And they're investing in something called neuromorphic computing. That sounds like pure science fiction.
It sounds it, but it's the long-term strategic play.
Okay, break it down for us.
Instead of just raw processing power, they're trying to build chips that actually mimic the human brain's structure. They're incredibly energy efficient.
So they're betting on a completely different kind of hardware for the future.
A future they control. Contrast that with the other members.
The dependency trap.
It's the perfect term. Brazil's national AI strategy doesn't even mention infrastructure. Not once.
Wow.
And countries like Egypt and Indonesia are relying heavily on Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft.
Which is fast, but it creates this vendor lock-in. You're
Yeah.
stuck. Your data, your services, everything depends on a foreign company.
It's a huge risk to their sovereignty, but you do see some creative solutions.
Like Ethiopia.
Ethiopia's plan is brilliant. They're building their national supercomputing center right next to the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
So they're leveraging cheap, abundant hydroelectric power.
Exactly, 5 gigawatts of it. They want to turn a natural resource into a technological advantage and attract big tech to set up a regional hub.
That's classic leapfrogging.
Okay.
Very smart. What about the data itself? Data sovereignty is a huge priority for everyone.
It is, but it creates this massive dilemma. You need vast data sets to train AI for public services, but you also need to protect privacy and security.
How are they trying to solve that?
Well, India has a really interesting proposal called the National AI Market. It has 3 parts. A decentralized data marketplace.
Right.
And this is the key part, a data annotation marketplace. They want to leverage their huge youth population to do the low expertise work, like labeling images for AIs.
So they're creating jobs and keeping the value of that data preparation inside their own economy.
That's the idea. The UAE is taking a different path, inspired by Estonia's X-Road system. They want to create a national data sharing program with open, standardized, AI-ready data to make everything interoperable and efficient.
Let's talk about the people, the specialized workforce. The sources say this is the #1 priority for every single BRICS member.
Because every single one is facing a massive talent gap and a brain drain.
Their best and brightest are leaving.
Exactly. So they're all investing heavily in STEM education, changing school curriculums. China has these AI plus X interdisciplinary university programs.
But this is where that sovereignty paradox you mentioned really kicks in, isn't it?
It's the heart of the problem. To achieve technological autonomy, you have to attract and retain the best global talent.
So you need flexible immigration laws, competitive salaries, all the things Russia's plan calls for.
Right. But that means your national tech strength becomes ironically dependent on offering a better quality of life than London or Palo Alto, better healthcare, security, social benefits.
Which is what perpetuates the brain drain in the first place. You can't be a tech hub if you're not a great place to live.
It's a vicious cycle. And you see a similar divide in R&D funding.
A split between the big state-led models and, public-private partnerships.
That's the split. China and Russia pour government money into strategic areas. They can focus resources on huge, decade-long projects.
Whereas the others, like India and Brazil, rely on these public-private partnerships, or PPPs.
And the risk there is that commercial interests can start driving the research agenda.
So you end up with AI for, say, online shopping instead of for improving agriculture or public health.
Precisely. And the funding levels are just stark. China is budgeting billions.
Yeah.
Brazil's government initiatives are offering grants of up to $85,000.
That's not even in the same universe.
It's a brutal contrast. It shows the difference between a recommendation and a true national strategy.
These internal economic tensions seem just as important as their unified stance against the West. The China-Brazil relationship is a perfect example of that.
It's a fantastic case study. It shows why real unity is so hard. China is the single biggest agent of what analysts call the primarization of Brazil's economy.
Primarization. Let's
Yeah,
define that. It sounds like you're being pushed back to basics.
that's exactly it. China is reinforcing Brazil's historical role as basically a giant farm in a quarry.
They buy the raw materials?
Soybeans, minerals, yes. And in return, they flood Brazil's market with cheaper Chinese imports, which displaces local manufacturers.
So they're actively undermining Brazil's industrial base, even while being a BRICS partner.
Correct. And paradoxically, the U.S. actually buys more manufactured goods from Brazil than China does.
But China's counterargument is all the infrastructure they build, right? The
Yeah.
ports, the railways, that's their soft power play.
That's the pitch.
Yeah.
That their model is better than the U.S. or European one. But analysts point out that the infrastructure is mainly designed to get those raw materials out of Brazil more efficiently.
So it actually reinforces the primarization.
It can, yes,
Yeah.
even with the development benefits it brings.
And we should remember, running these huge state-led tech programs is incredibly difficult for anybody. It's not just a BRICS problem.
It's a universal challenge. I mean, look at the U.S. Navy's Constellation-class frigate program. They spent nearly $9 billion and then had to cancel it.
A complete failure.
They tried to adapt a proven European design and ended up redesigning the whole thing, leading to massive cost overruns. It just shows that throwing money at strategic tech development, whether you're a superpower or a developing economy, doesn't guarantee success.
Okay, so let's summarize this deep dive. Where does this leave BRICS?
Well, BRICS has definitely succeeded as a geopolitical statement. They are practicing institutional balancing.
But
They have no monetary unity, and their technological ambitions are worlds apart. It's really only China and Russia who are fighting for total autonomous sovereignty. The rest are just trying to manage their dependency.
the sources do suggest a path forward, a way for the bloc to bridge that gap.
They do. The solution they propose is genuine strategic intra-bloc cooperation. Imagine if China and Russia created supply chains internal to BRICS.
So a guaranteed supply of chips, hardware, and data centers for the other members.
Exactly. Under reliable terms, without depending on U.S. or European tech, that would create a truly parallel technological ecosystem.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener. If global tech supply chains are being used as political weapons, do the emerging economies of the Global South need to build their own secure internal rules-based order for AI hardware and data? Or is accepting that vendor lock-in from big tech just the fastest, most practical path to development? That was our deep dive into the BRICS strategy documents. Go forth and be well informed.